everyone, welcome and thanks so much for joining. We'll give it a couple of minutes for everyone to finish joining before we kick off. We'll just give it a few more minutes. So just a few housekeeping notes while we wait. So this webinar is being recorded. And if you have any questions along the way, just pop them into the Q&A box below. We won't be able to answer them live as we go, but we will go through as many as we can at the end of the session. So we might get started now. So hi everyone, I'm Hannah. I'm an account manager here at ProSpend, and I'm joined today by Joe, the Chief Revenue Officer at Archa. So as you know, we're really excited about the ProSpend and Archa partnership, and today we're going to go through the 5 signs your business may have outgrown its current card program. So this is things like credit, rewards, FX, multi-entity support, and card controls. And then we'll look at how ProSpend connects those card transactions straight through to receipts, coding, approvals, and reconciliation, so you can keep control as you scale. You'll also walk away with a practical checklist so you can review your own card program. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Joe to take us through Archa.
Amazing. Thank you, Hannah, and lovely to be here. Thanks everyone for signing up and coming along. I'm hoping this will be a really informative session for existing ProSpend customers or maybe those that are looking at this for the first time. And as Hannah said, really wanting to get into the depths of exactly who Archa is. I'm sure maybe you've seen on LinkedIn the announcement that the partnership has just started, but also maybe for those that haven't heard of Archa and who we are, I think it's how we plug into ProSpend. So what we'll run through is a few different areas. So as I said, we'll start with a view of who Archa is and what we do, and a little bit about why we've partnered with ProSpend and why we're so excited about the partnership that launched last month. And then some practical views of exactly what having a subpar process, I guess, with corporate cards or business cards looks like, flowing into obviously those 5 signs that maybe your existing card program or card process isn't maybe working for you. As Hannah mentioned, there's a bit of a checklist. There's 10 questions to think about in terms of your current setup, as well as the customer story. And then, as we said, we'll move into some questions at the end with maybe a little surprise in between. So let's talk about Archa. So I'm sure there's people here that maybe haven't heard about us. So really in a nutshell, what we've built is a corporate card and spend management platform for growing businesses. So the idea was really built out of the fact that when businesses went to the big 4 banks or Amex, it was really difficult to get a basic corporate card. And the origin story of Archa is actually that Oliver, our CEO, was running a different business but had to go down to the bank to get a corporate card. I won't say which one, but it was essentially laughed out of the branch. And they said, we've never given a business of your size a corporate card. At that stage, the business had millions in funding, and really all he wanted was just a card or multiple cards, one for each staff member, with a really small limit on it to give him better visibility of who was spending what, and he just wasn't able to do that. So not the same day, but very soon after, the business pivoted to really try and solve that problem. So what it looks like today is a Australian-based and run business. We're a principal issuer of MasterCards, so we issue the cards ourselves, and we don't have a bank that sits behind us. We make credit decisions ourselves, often without personal guarantees or pre-funding. But most importantly, we are not a bank. We're a fintech provider, as I said, that funds the credit ourselves and builds technology on our side. In terms of the platform itself, obviously the credit layer is one part of it, but we've really tried to take that further to make it more embedded into the processes and tools that businesses would use today. So what that looks like in practice is a platform that you can log into where you can issue physical cards, virtual cards, single-use virtual cards, and even temporary use cards where you can set a validity period, whether that's 1 day, 7 days, or a custom number of days, which is really perfect for businesses that have transit employees that are traveling a lot, that maybe need to go to a conference once or twice a year, but outside of that, they don't really need or have use of having a card. So make it really easy to issue different types of cards to different people. And then within that, you can set different controls and limits. So from an admin perspective, really easy for you to set a card limit, change that limit on the fly, and drop it back if they come back from a trip, for example, without needing to go into a branch or fill out a paper form. We go even further than that with category rules. So you can turn off international transactions, you can turn off ATM withdrawal, you can set daily and weekly and purchase limits, and cardholders themselves can freeze cards within their own app. And within that app, they can also have a complete view of their transactions and their limits within there. And obviously, these all flow into ProSpend, so you're able to see those transactions there in double quick time. On top of that, obviously, there's the aspect of having credit. So we operate on up to 33 days of interest-free credit. And so in that sense, you have a statement period that lasts at 30 days, and then we just trigger a direct debit via a nominated bank account for any spend on that card. So operates a bit like a charge card rather than a pure credit card, but it does mean that you've got no kind of pre-funding somewhere or wallets with money sitting there that you're not using. You just get direct debited for any spend that you've got, and then that capital obviously can be used elsewhere. On top of that, we've got a really strong rewards offering. So whether that's going direct with someone like a Velocity business flyer or via Pay Rewards, so powered by pay.com.au, it's really on par with what Amex do today in terms of the breadth of airlines and carriers that they serve, whilst also having really strong rewards offering for businesses that are spending upwards of kind of 50K up. On top of that, obviously, we've got foreign exchange side. So when you're with a big four bank, you're constantly paying 3% for FX. If you're with Amex, it's more like 3.5%. And we charge 0.49%. So we see businesses that have, whether that's foreign travel or it could even be subscriptions or memberships in other currencies, you're not getting penalized for processing that in another currency. And this is kind of the market leading rate on top of it being the MasterCard daily exchange rate as well. So you're kind of getting best of both worlds from that. And then from a business perspective, this is kind of hot off the press, but we have won for the third year running the best corporate card platform in the Make for We Money Awards. On top of that, we've won outstanding customer service twice. I think the average pickup time for our customer support is about 20 seconds. And so unlike waiting in the queue, whether that's over the phone or in a branch, you're able to both self-serve a lot more on the app in terms of doing basic things like changing your PIN. But when you do have a problem, you're chatting to someone who's based in this office just across the room there in really quick time, and they're able to stop that on the phone. So we're really proud of the fact that we built both a great platform, but I think we're equally proud that we've got some awards for customer service, because it's something that I think a lot of businesses really care about, because we're talking about money going in and out of business, which is really important. So that's a little bit about Archa. I guess that talks about maybe best in breed from a card management perspective. I guess within a process, as finance leaders in the room, the other part of that is once you've made a purchase on your card, what happens next? And that's where we really look to partner with best in breed platforms, of which ProSpend clearly is one of those. So this might give you an idea of maybe some existing processes that you might have. Traditional bank card, you wait for the statement at the end of each month. If there's any fraud, that's normally where you find out about that. And you sometimes have to download a file from your bank and then upload that into your single source of truth. And maybe there's a spreadsheet in the middle where you're doing some coding. And then only at that point do you realize that half the receipts that you asked for haven't been submitted. So then you go on to a collection process or a chasing process to try and get those receipts. The impact that having something like ProSpend Archa is we have a connection that allows the card transactions to be pushed through to ProSpend within 24 hours. And that often means that receipts can be captured either same day or very soon after, while it's still fresh. So they're able to do the coding, tag the employees, obviously everything to do with FBT can all be captured within ProSpend. And then all the approvals and then the pushing to your ERP is done within ProSpend from there. So whilst the cardholder will have an Archa app where they'll be able to activate their card and change their PIN, they'll be doing most of the things within ProSpend, and that data will really match up with what's happening, rather than having to wait days or weeks, or even just doing it manually to try and get those transactions in. And so the impact of that is obviously having that cleaner data, which is really important. But really, it's about the less manual work that has to go in. And obviously, the more manual work you're doing, the more chance there is for errors to happen, or discrepancies with date ranges and things like that. What we look to build is best in breed card platform that pushes data as quick as possible into your EMS system, which is obviously ProSpend, that then can be cleaned up and reconciled and then pushed into your ERP. And when that works really well, and we'll talk about a case study later on, the amount of admin time that's saved is really material across both finance teams and also cardholders themselves. So in terms of the cost of a business, I think I've tried to compare, traditional bank programs with maybe like a prepaid debit side of things. And there's real merits of each one, but there's clearly really big drawbacks as well. So whilst a traditional corporate card program will give you that credit line, so you're not using your own cash, and they may have some rewards tacked on, but often businesses will have to choose between an integration and rewards. They really miss out on everything else. So, the ability to issue different types of cards or change limits on the fly, or even get a bank program up quickly is really not possible for a lot of businesses. So then they'll maybe move to something that's more of a kind of prepaid debit offering where you can have a bit more control of virtual cards and budgets and things like that. But then the flip side is you're often then not getting rewarded, or in the case of prepaid, the acceptance rates tend to be a lot lower as a result for real key business spend like hotels and car hire and even putting the card behind the bar if you entertain clients. So what we see as a corporate card provider is businesses often have not just one of these, but a real mix. And that's where the complexity really exacerbates. So again, this is something that we see from more businesses than you would expect. And it's often setup that maybe is inherited from some businesses, or just as you scale, you kind of just tack on these extra things. So it might be that your exec team have Amexes for in their own name, but they're business Amexes, and then everyone else has a different type of card that's used for everyday spending. There's a shared card that goes around the office and shared across multiple people, and everyone else has reimbursements for the kind of one-off. If you go overseas, maybe there's a low FX card that is used just for that again, someone has to own. And if all else fails, then the director who does most of the spending uses their own personal card, and then everything else kind of gets better beneath it. So you're then dealing with, a bank portal, an Amex portal, you've got emails and spreadsheets and backup bank and HR claim payroll platform. And that all often lands into, either a finance team member or an accounts payable person that then has to unpick a lot of these things. And then when it comes to receipts or other things, they then have to go back to follow the line that goes back up to the person from there. So what if we can solve one thing as a business, it's giving you the best of breed of all of those things. So giving the ability to have, a line of credit rather than using your own cash, but then also giving you the flexibility when it comes to issuing cards, that you can issue, a temporary card to this person, but then this person needs a physical card, but you can all manage it within one system. That's really important for businesses that want to scale. But that card also has to be accepted everywhere. So where an Amex might give you, a lot of points, and we'll maybe talk about the RBA later on, you can't use it everywhere. So you have to have a backup redundancy card to manage that. And that can also be the same for prepaid. So we've taken all the things that we think are really important for a business, and then we've tried to build that into one single platform that gives you the best card management possible, that then plugs into best in breed when it comes to what's next. So with that being said, I'll put together the different signs that maybe you've outgrown your corporate card platform. And there's obviously more that sit within here, but I think these are probably the 5 most relevant when it comes to businesses that we speak with. So the first indicator is really what we've just talked about. So, if you're running multiple cards and multiple different systems, if you're having to make concessions or sacrifices elsewhere in order to have different card products, and that's just going to exacerbate as you grow, and it often results in a single point of failure. And we see that often where there's someone that's maybe been in the business for a long period of time and only they know how to reconcile a certain card or a certain process. So if that's you, it's maybe time to think about consolidating that into one. And the second one is the kind of basic tasks. And I think when we talk about Archa, we don't talk about taking a great system and making it better. A lot of these things are real hygiene factors. Like, you shouldn't have to wait 2 weeks to get a card delivered. You shouldn't have to only have one address for physical cards to be delivered. You should expect Google Pay and Apple Pay. You should be able to make limit changes on the fly without having to call someone up. These are real basic things. But every single time you do that, it takes you 5 minutes here or 10 minutes here, or a new starter has a subpar onboarding experience. And those are things where if you do really add them up, you're talking about hours and probably just a bad experience in general. The third one is like you're downloading, uploading, and exporting. So, your 3 or 4 systems that you're using don't talk to each other. And I think in this day and age, even without AI, the expectation for businesses should be that, data goes from one place to the next without a human having to be involved. And ideally, as it goes along that process, it gets enriched and it gets moved quick enough that you're able to make the decisions that you want. So if, across that process, you're dealing with a big 4 bank, for example, or you're dealing with a platform that doesn't plug into something else, and now's the time to really think again about, from a risk perspective, but also about an efficiency perspective, is that the right way for you to manage it? Number 4 is probably more to do with the preloading or the prepaid cards. And we set our stall out very early to try and solve this issue with credit, without being a platform where people need the credit. It's just a better mechanism for them to manage their everyday payments. But if you're a business where you have, hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars sitting in a wallet or sitting in an account, or even you have a corporate card facility with a security deposit around it, that's money and capital that could be used elsewhere in the business to fund growth, or to fund development, or even to fund the human cost of hiring. But right now, that's just sitting there doing nothing. So we think that if we can just extend that credit for a short period of time and then direct debit you for that, you've then opened up that capital to be used on things that can help business. And the last one, which is probably the most pointed, is like you're not actually being rewarded for the spend that you're making. So, for too long, the process has been, if you want to earn airline points, you have to have an Amex. And if you have an Amex, it has to be personally guaranteed, or it's not accepted everywhere, or you fall back on, basic things like issuing cards to multiple staff members. Like, that seems super dumb. Like, we wanted to build something that had MasterCard level acceptance, but also had the rewards that meant that, CFOs, financial controllers, heads of finance can start to offset some of the costs that they're seeing. And we're back to the traveling levels of pre-COVID now. So we're seeing a lot of businesses are doing a lot of, interstate and overseas travel. And that costs, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. If you can have a card that gives you some passive earning of points, and you can offset a portion of that through booking those flights with points, that's again going to free up some money that you could be used elsewhere. On top of obviously the FX savings whilst you are overseas, for example, of being able to spend freely and still managing that all in one system. So where to start? I guess I've raced through this fairly quickly, and there's probably a lot of content there. And what I wanted to do is really bring this back to maybe 10 questions or some thoughts that might get you thinking about reviewing your current program when it comes to corporate cards or spending in general. Some of these are obviously linked to those 5 areas, but I think that the main ones to really think about is think of all of the micro things that you're doing every day. So how long does it take for a new starter to wait for a card, or how do we change a limit, or can we even freeze a card, or it would be great if we could do this. Now's the time to really look into the market, and obviously ideally look at Archer, but there's providers out there that go way beyond what a big four bank can do today. Like, who is involved in the process? How many different teams does the end-to-end process from spend through to reconciliation touch? And can we remove areas of that with technology to move that data quicker and more efficiently? And then the one thing we maybe haven't talked about, we're assuming this is just one entity and one business, but as we scale and we acquire businesses or we open a new entity, often that means you start from scratch again, and you think, well, now I've got to either replicate this, I've got to get a new facility with the bank, or I've got to, have a new connection into somewhere, or maybe I have to consolidate into one and then do a multi-entity sweep at the end of the month in my ERP to be able to make that make sense. Then that's another really good thing to think about. This shouldn't be a process that stifles growth, but oftentimes it is. And then I guess the last ones are around, how much cash is actually tied up in floats or wallets or deposits. And if you were given that back tomorrow, what could you do with that? Because often across the different processes that you've got, that can be really material around there. So have a think about these. I think this is being sent around to everyone after, but this will give you a really good idea of, I guess, starting to quantify, starting to think about maybe some areas where you could look to improve. And this is what's possible when you do. So, this is from a business that has a limit of about $100,000, and they do have some overseas spending. But we managed to calculate across, the card holders and the finance teams, like it was taking 5 or 10 minutes to just do a basic expense report, and it was taking a long time for finance teams to issue cards and manage that process. We worked out over the course of a year, we've saved about 800 plus hours of admin time, and just from real basic things. From a points perspective, obviously $100,000 worth of spend, and this business was doing a lot of domestic flights to Melbourne to Sydney, and they're also going to Perth, and we were able to offset 75 of those return domestic flights a year through Velocity. And then the other big one is FX savings. So if you're saving 2.5% every time you spend overseas, and you have Facebook in this case, so Meta ads and Google ads, this is a retail business, and when it came to Black Friday, we were saving like $10,000-$15,000 for those big months, and that really does add up over time, and probably something that you won't see readily within your statement, and it's something that's often hidden. But if you do have some overseas spending, it doesn't have to be travel, I definitely recommend having a look and really understanding what the true cost is of that for you as a business. Now, the good news, I guess, from everyone here is we're now live with ProSpend, which we're really obviously excited by, but we've been working behind the scenes on getting some existing customers that we've both got across to the new integration. One of those is Bellini. So not in the slide before, but obviously Bellini is a retailer, and they had a lot of legacy bank cards with the Big Four bank. They had real no flexibility on limits, and often they were seeing, as others do, as they added a new card, their overall exposure with the bank went up. So this gave them the ability to have one consolidated limit and then decide the dynamic limits under that, which was really important. And also no virtual cards. So everything had to be physical, and they had no way of paying via wallets. And they have obviously a lot of staff members that are kind of out and about. They have a lot of different stores and people that are working through there. So the results for Bellini, which were really great, one was obviously having more control and being able to move more of their spend into one place, which gave them great visibility. But also from a financial perspective, there was a massive FX fee saving that they were able to do, and because a lot of suppliers they were using overseas. And then obviously reducing the admin at month end. And a big thank you to the ProSpend team, and especially to Hannah for all her help in helping Jeff and the team get on board. And they're obviously now super happy with the process. And this is obviously something that we're looking to replicate across more customers, and hence why we're doing the webinar today.
Thanks, Joe.
Hannah, over to you.
Yeah, and I can echo what Joe was saying. I've worked quite closely with Bellini, and I know they're really happy with the integration between Archa and ProSpend. So before we move on to questions and answers, Joe's got something special to share with everyone on the call today.
Drum roll. So we, as part of the launch of the partnership, there's a launch offer. So this is valid until the end of September. But what we are essentially doing is 1 month free for the Archa subscriptions. So one thing I should have mentioned, I guess, earlier is at the moment we don't have any lock-in contracts. So it's just a rolling monthly agreement that we have with customers. So what we really want to do is have, as many ProSpend customers, maybe not ripping out what you've got today, but trialing Archa side by side for a month to understand the impact that you can have from an efficiency point of view. So as a launch offer, if you do sign up and you're approved before the 3rd of September, we will waive those Archa fees for 1 month. So if you are keen, have a chat with the ProSpend account manager, whether that's Hannah or someone else, and we can arrange to have a demo with some of the Archa team. But yeah, we'd be really keen to chat to as many people and understand the current process today. So hopefully this is an exciting offer to smooth the process.
Cool. Thanks, Joe. So we'll go through some of the questions now. All right. So if we decide to change card programs, how long would that process take to switch?
Yeah, it's a good question. The process that we normally have internally at Archa is we would ask you for kind of basic financial information, so latest FY P&L balance sheet, and normally a couple of months of bank statements, and then obviously information from the business, so ABN, those sorts of things. The team, the support team and the credit team sit in this office here, and we'll typically review that and come back with a decision within 2 days is probably our average. Obviously, there's some more complex setups where you might have trustees and people that sit beneath that, where it might take a day or two longer. But if you were to apply on a Monday, we'd be really confident that you could be live and ready to go by the end of the week.
Cool. What does the RBA's decision mean for cards and payments?
Yeah, very topical. I mean, I touched on it earlier. So I guess for those that are not aware, the RBA has made the decision to ban surcharging across Visa and MasterCard. And it's probably come out in the last couple of weeks that Amex is probably going to follow suit as well. So they won't be surcharged either. And the impact that obviously has on businesses accepting card payments is that they're going to have to swallow more of the cost of that processing, as opposed to passing that on to the card holder. So I guess what we expect to see as part of that, one is that we would see if Amex go through with the surcharge exemption, is that businesses will probably stop accepting Amex as much, because the cost of processing a Visa or MasterCard is materially less than processing an Amex. We probably see the same outcome if Amex do not do that, as in they continue to surcharge. Then we just see the cost from the business's side, so the ProSpend customers or Archa customers, then becoming really expensive, because whilst they're not being surcharged for Visa, MasterCard, they are for Amex. So the cost of processing an ATO bill for $100,000 might cost them $2,000 with an Amex, but nothing with an Archa card. And if they're earning rewards, it's probably not economical for them to keep that Amex card. So we're probably going to see maybe less on the Visa MasterCard difference, and probably the Visa MasterCard versus Amex difference when we think about that. And the other big piece is the economics for a business card and a consumer card are very different. And so we're probably going to see, for those that have a kind of business and personal hybrid card, the rewards offer there is going to be probably going to get worse, and we're already seeing that with some of the banks, whereas the business card side of things and the economics have stayed the same. So we'll likely see probably more generous offers when it comes to rewards on business, and that's obviously going to help make those points go further, and because there's obviously less spend on business than there is on consumer. So yeah, we're as a business, as Archa, we're pretty excited about the change. We think we're really well placed to both benefit from being a non-surcharge card, but also having a really great reward platform as well.
Cool. So we've got another one here. So what are the main differences of credit cards versus prepaid or debit cards?
Yeah. So obviously, there's maybe some slides before where we've talked on it a little bit, but I would say the two or three main areas. One is obviously the holding of cash elsewhere and repurposing that, which I think is I've talked about at length, so I won't go into that. The other ones, I guess, are around acceptance and around rewards. So the acceptance side of things, we see prepaid cards not being available where you have to take security deposits often, and that's one where it falls down. So for car hire, for hotels where you have to put a credit card down and there's a hold on it, often they either won't accept a prepaid card as an offer, as a mechanism, or they will take the full amount. That could be $1,000, $2,000 off that card, and then they'll refund it back when you've finished. So a lot of businesses struggle when it comes to either using it overseas or using it in those contexts. And then they have to have a backup card, whether that's a personal credit card or a business credit card, to be used elsewhere. So I think that's a really important one. And clearly also, we just talked about the RBA changes, but the economics of a prepaid card don't allow those businesses to offer airline points or reward points. And so you're often foregoing that as a benefit as well. So if you're a business that travels overseas, you've got the prepaid cards that I'm sure the ProSpend team know very well, which has really great FX rates, but you're then obviously not getting the airline benefits to offset costs and stuff like that. So I would say the credit piece and being able to use that money elsewhere, I'd say the acceptance piece, and then the rewards piece as well.
Cool. So where a not-for-profit, do we qualify for credit cards?
Yes, we do. We work with a lot of not-for-profits today, and I think the real benefit of being a business where we're not tied to a bank is that we make our own credit decisions when it comes to not-for-profits. Obviously, it's a very different type of entity structure in terms of identifying beneficial owners and things like that, and we tend to take a pretty common sense, pragmatic approach to that, and whether that's one or two senior officials that are on the board, or for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander based not-for-profits, it's about using other methods where maybe passports and driver's license are not readily available. But we have the same kind of process internally of how we think about that, but we just work with not-for-profits on what their equivalent data points that they can give us are, and we tend to approve a lot, but also it doesn't take the months and lots of written letters and things that maybe banks and other providers will ask for. And we have a pretty streamlined approach for that, which is why they're a really good fit.
Cool. So we've got a question from Adriana. So for ProSpend team, will the daily transactions create a new card claim for each card holder in ProSpend? So I can answer that one. So yeah, each card holder will have its own claim within that statement period. So that will just build throughout that period, and then they'll be able to submit after that. Cool. So I've got one for you, Joe. Does this also work in New Zealand?
Yeah, good question. So not currently. We are just Australian ABN holders at the moment. We do have some customers based in New Zealand that also have an Australian entity, and you can issue cards out to New Zealand employees. They work. The only drawback at the moment is that we will convert that back into Australian dollars, and that's what will trigger the direct debit for at the end of the month. And so that is technically possible. Our plans are to be in New Zealand, maybe not by the end of this year, but by kind of early next. So when we partnered with ProSpend, we were kind of aware that there are a lot of customers that are based in New Zealand. So that absolutely is the plan for us to go to New Zealand. Beyond New Zealand, I probably don't have an answer just yet. But yeah, the plan is absolutely to start working with New Zealand businesses and keeping things in either New Zealand dollars or Australian dollars when that does happen. So the more people who are kind of keen, the quicker we'll be able to deploy that. So if you are a ProSpend customer who asked that question, please put your hand up or have a chat to the ProSpend team, and that'll help us prioritize them.
Cool. So you've mentioned rewards. Does the company get the reward points or employees?
the company gets the reward points. There's no incentive for the employees to overspend to earn the reward points on their side. So the way it works is you have your one Archer account. You either point that to a Velocity Business Flyer account or a Pay Rewards account, and then we pull all of the spending up in that given month. And then as soon as your direct debit clears, we'll then push that to a Business Flyer or a Pay Rewards account where you can then redeem to Qantas or KrisFlyer or Velocity from there. So no, not to the individual. Everything goes to the business, and then that can be controlled by the CFO or the financial controller from there.
Cool. Thanks for that. So that brings us to the end of the webinar. So thanks everyone for joining today. A copy of this webinar recording will be sent out to everyone, so just keep an eye on your inbox. And yeah, as Joe mentioned before, please don't hesitate to reach out to your account manager at ProSpend if you need any further details. And thanks everyone again for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.